A madman got a lonely billionaire pregnant because of his size. Long before Olivia Nwosu became the billionaire that Lagos admired and envied, she was just a quiet little girl in ABA, a child with bright, searching eyes and a heart that yearned for tenderness. Her childhood was not painted with the colors of laughter or warmth. It was shaded instead with shadows of silence, discipline, and the lingering ache of abandonment. Her mother, Madame Agnes, was a stern traitor, a woman carved by betrayal and hardened by survival. Agnes had been left by the man she once loved, Olivia's father, before her daughter was even born. He had vanished like smoke, leaving her with nothing but a swollen belly, shame, and the burden of raising a child in a world that showed little mercy to single mothers. Agnes did not weep in front of people. She fought, and her battleground was Ariaria International Market, where she sold fabrics from morning till night, her sharp voice rising above the chaotic hum of haggling customers and impatient apprentices. Her tongue cut like a blade when bargaining, and her cane landed swiftly on any apprentice who dared slack. By the time she dragged her tired body home each evening, her strength was drained, her spirit bruised, and whatever softness she once carried buried beneath layers of exhaustion. Olivia would sit on the wooden bench in front of their small compound, her little legs dangling as she waited. She waited for her mother to ask how school had gone. She waited for a smile, for laughter, for a word of kindness. She would hold up her drawings, scribbled on the back of old exercise books, hoping her mother would notice them. But each night ended the same. Madame Agnes would collapse on the raffia mat, whispering bitter prayers that sounded more like curses at life than thanksgiving. The cold of success. Olivia, her mother would say, jabbing her finger like a weapon. If you want to survive in this wicked world, forget love. Love is for fools. Money is what you need. Chase it. Hold it. Never let it go. Those words became scripture to Olivia. She believed them. She drank them in until they became part of her blood. She grew up with the conviction that love was a distraction, a foolish weakness that destroyed women. She had seen her mother's eyes flame with pain whenever her father's name slipped into conversations. She learned that promises were lies, that trust was a trap, and that family itself could abandon you. So Olivia armored herself. In school, she never joined the noisy groups of girls who giggled about crushes and gossip. She walked with quick steps, studied with fierce focus, and wore seriousness like a second skin. Teachers adored her brilliance, but classmates whispered behind her back that she was proud, cold, unreachable. Deep inside, however, Olivia longed for the very things she denied herself: friendship, laughter, warmth. But she had mastered the art of killing hope before it could grow. A mother's bitterness. Agnes was not cruel for cruelty's sake. She was a woman broken in spirit, reshaped by betrayal into something unrecognizable. Each time she remembered how Olivia's father had abandoned her, the wound tore open anew, and Olivia became the easiest target for her rage. "You look too much like him," she would hiss, eyes narrowed. The same eyes. The same nose. God forbid you grow up to be like that useless man. Sometimes, her words landed like blows. Other times, her cane struck Olivia's tender skin for the smallest of mistakes. And yet, Olivia never hated her mother. She pitied her. Even as a child, she could sense the crushing weight Agnes carried, the pain that seeped out of her every sigh. Many nights, Olivia would watch her mother sitting at the edge of the bed, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She wanted to run and embrace her, to promise she would never leave her like her father did. But her mother was not a woman who welcomed hugs. She only understood how to fight, how to survive. The silent promise. So Olivia made a vow in the secret chambers of her heart. I will never let a man destroy me the way he destroyed her. I will never give any man the power to break me. That promise became her compass. It forged her ambition, made her disciplined, and hardened her resolve. But it also chained her heart, locking away every chance at love or softness. Blossoming into womanhood. At the university, Olivia blossomed into a striking young woman. Tall, graceful, with smooth caramel skin and sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to look straight through people, she carried herself with quiet dignity. She wasn't one to flaunt trends, but her clothes were always neat, tailored, and elegant. Her beauty drew attention like bees to nectar, yet her demeanor warned suitors to keep their distance. And suitors came endlessly. "Olivia, can I walk you to class? You're always so serious. Don't you ever smile? I saved you a seat. You're the most beautiful girl in this faculty. Please, just one chance." But her answer never wavered. "No, thank you." Her mother's voice rang in her ears each time. "Men will scatter your life. One careless mistake, and you're finished." She saw the proof around her. Classmates whose lives were derailed by heartbreaks, pregnancies, and scandals. Olivia disciplined herself fiercely. At night, she sometimes lay in her narrow hostel bed, wondering what it would feel like to be held, kissed, loved. But she smothered the feelings quickly. Books are safer than boys. Ambition is safer than affection. The hustler's path. While many girls relied on boyfriends and uncles for pocket money, Olivia built her own survival. She sold clothes, shoes, and trinkets she bought cheaply from ABA. She learned to braid hair, charged classmates for photocopied notes, and turned her hostel room into a mini boutique. Girls came to her before parties for outfits. Boys came secretly to buy gifts for girlfriends. Some mocked her. "Fine girl like you, suffering yourself with hustle. Just find a big man to take care of you." Olivia would smile faintly and reply, "I can take care of myself." By her final year, her hustle had grown into a business. She had customers both on and off campus, and she was saving aggressively. Her independence became her pride, her armor against the world. Building an empire. After graduation, Olivia didn't run to relatives for favors. She didn't wait for a rich boyfriend to set her up. With her savings, she began trading fabrics on a larger scale, Ankara, lace, and imported materials. She supplied boutiques, tailors, and even individuals she met in salons. But she wanted more. Her big break came when she boldly pitched to a government ministry for a supply contract. They laughed at her at first, dismissing her as a young girl who didn't know the weight of business. But she returned with samples, price lists, and unshakable confidence. Weeks later, she landed her first contract. She delivered flawlessly, and word spread, "That young lady is reliable. She delivers quality." From then, doors opened. More contracts came, her profits multiplied, and soon she rented an office on Lagos Island. She wasn't dragging bags of fabrics anymore. She was employing staff, managing accounts, and building credibility. By her mid-20s, Olivia had transformed into a force. Wealth began to flow. She wore designer suits to meetings, drove sleek cars, and moved into an upscale apartment. Later, she would become the billionaire Lagos society admired and envied. A woman who rose without leaning on any man. The misjudgment of men. But success did not protect her from whispers. In corners, men smirked. "No woman builds like this alone. She must have a politician funding her. She's too fine. There's a man behind her wealth." Some even approached boldly with offers. "Madam, I can help you expand. All I need is friendship." Olivia's lips would curl in a cold smile. "My business is already expanding. What I need is respect, not friendship." They never believed her. And though she pretended not to care, the lies pierced her quietly. It reminded her too much of her mother's voice. The world will never believe a woman can stand without leaning on a man. The loneliness of power. The higher she climbed, the lonelier she became. Wealth built walls instead of bridges. Men admired her but feared her. The ones who dared to try often accused her of being too proud, too cold, too independent. Friends grew fewer, lovers non-existent. Olivia smiled in boardrooms, laughed at business luncheons, and dazzled at high society events. But when the lights dimmed, she returned to empty rooms, scrolling through her phone with no one to call. She had everything: wealth, respect, influence. Yet she carried loneliness like a hidden scar beneath her expensive gowns. She had built an empire, yes, but in locking out love, she had also locked out warmth. And that emptiness would one day open the door for the strangest, most unexpected twist of fate. A madman, an accident of desire, and the scandal that would shake her carefully built world. The truth she carried. No one truly knew Olivia's story. They saw only the surface. The woman stepping out of luxury cars, the glass office with polished furniture, the name whispered with respect in government circles and corporate boardrooms. They saw the end product, power, wealth, beauty, but not the long nights she had spent braiding hostile girls' hair under a dim bulb, or the sweat on her back as she hauled heavy fabric bales across crowded markets. They didn't know how she had fought tooth and nail for her first contract, walking into an air-conditioned ministry office in ABA with trembling hands but a straight spine, and refusing to leave until she was heard. They didn't know the fear of rejection she had swallowed, the mockery she endured, the risks she took when everyone else said she was just a girl. No, they didn't know, so they made up their own story. She's too young to have all this without men backing her. Forget it, nah politician day sponsor am. You know these girls, nah body them day use not brain. But Olivia carried the truth quietly, like a jewel hidden deep inside her chest. She told herself she didn't need to explain to anyone. One day, perhaps, her life would reveal the truth without her ever having to defend it. The quiet confession. One evening, after a long day of closing sales at her shop, Olivia returned to her small apartment on Lagos Island. The room was modest compared to her wealth. She liked it that way. She poured herself a glass of water, sat on the edge of her bed, and stared at her reflection in the wardrobe mirror. Her voice, soft and hesitant, broke the silence. "I'm not a little girl anymore," she whispered. "I'm not getting younger either. I've built myself. I can take care of myself. Maybe it's time to give love a chance. I won't depend on a man's pocket, but maybe I can allow myself his heart." The words startled her. She had never spoken them out loud. It was as if a secret door inside her chest had creaked open. For the first time, she admitted that wealth alone could not fill the aching emptiness that sometimes echoed in her soul. Admiration from afar. Men had always admired Olivia. They admired the calm way she walked into a room, the quiet dignity in her posture, the sharp intelligence in her voice. They admired her beauty, yes, the smooth caramel glow of her skin, the curve of her jawline, the commanding sparkle in her eyes. But it was more than that. She radiated something rare, self-sufficiency. But admiration had never been enough to move her. She dismissed men politely, sometimes with a faint smile, other times with a simple "no, thank you." To Olivia, love was a risk she couldn't afford. Now, though, things began to change. She started noticing small things. The way one of her suppliers spoke with unusual respect. How another entrepreneur lingered not out of lust but to genuinely hear her ideas. She didn't jump in, but she didn't brush it off either. A part of her began to wonder. The fear of losing control. Still deep inside, fear coiled tightly. Her mother's voice, sharp as a blade, echoed. "Men will scatter your life if you let them." Olivia knew herself well. She had spent years controlling every detail of her life. Her money, her business, her emotions. What if intimacy shattered that control? What if surrendering to love left her vulnerable, weak, broken the way her mother had been? She wanted love, yes, but only on her terms. She wanted loyalty, respect, patience. She wanted a man who would love her, not own her. And until she was sure, she guarded herself like a fortress. Testing the waters. She began to test the waters cautiously. She accepted lunch invitations, exchanged numbers, answered late-night calls that once she would have ignored. Friends began to tease her. "Olivia, you day smile for phone now, oh. Who day run your matter?" She would laugh it off, but her cheeks flushed. Each time her heart threatened to run away with itself, she reminded her mind. "I can take care of myself regardless. If I love, it must be because I choose to, not because I need to." The unexpected encounter. It happened on a warm afternoon at her fabric shop in Lagos Island. The day was busy. Rolls of lace and ankara stacked high, customers bargaining, apprentices rushing. Amid the chaos, a tall, well-groomed man walked in. His name was Chaik. Unlike others, he didn't throw careless compliments or try to impress with swagger. He touched the fabrics gently, asked thoughtful questions about sourcing, compared textures like he knew the trade. Finally, he looked at her with a calm smile. "You're not just beautiful," he said. "You're brilliant. Most ladies your age are chasing men's pockets, but you're building your own empire. That's rare." Olivia froze. For years, men had called her beautiful, elegant, sexy. But no one had ever called her brilliant. Something in her heart softened. For the first time, she saw a man who seemed to look past her face and into her mind. The hidden truth. But what Olivia didn't know was that Chaik hadn't stumbled into her shop by chance. He and his friends had been watching her from afar, curious about the untouchable beauty who rejected every man. Over bottles of beer one evening, one of them smirked. $500 says you can't get her into bed. Chaik's lips curled. "Give me time. No woman is impossible." And so his pursuit began. Not from admiration, but from a foolish bet. The illusion of love. Chaik played his role well. He didn't rush, didn't pressure. He called at odd hours just to ask if she had eaten. He offered rides after late nights, sent small gifts, and listened with the attentiveness of a priest. To Olivia, it was intoxicating. No man had ever treated her this way. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe. She smiled at her phone, daydreamed during meetings, and let her heart sketch a future she had never dared imagine. A home, children, shared laughter. Maybe Mama was wrong, she thought. Maybe not all men scatter lives. Maybe this one is different. Her secret. Throughout their growing closeness, Olivia kept one truth hidden. She was still a virgin. At her age, most would find it unbelievable. But discipline, fear, and her mother's harsh warnings had kept her untouched. She didn't plan to confess. She wanted Chaik to discover it when the time came. Proof of her trust. Proof that she had saved this part of herself for someone she believed worthy. The evening of trust. By her late 20s, Olivia finally surrendered to the thought. "I'm not a child anymore," she told herself. "I can trust him. If there's any man I can trust, it's Chaik." So one Friday evening, she dressed simply yet elegantly and went to his apartment. She carried no suspicion, only the nervous excitement of a woman ready to give her all. Chaik welcomed her warmly. He had prepared the scene carefully. A simple meal, soft music, a neat apartment glowing with dim light. Olivia's heart fluttered, but she silenced her fear. This was her moment. Chaik's secret resolve. What she didn't know was that just days earlier, his friends had mocked him. "You've been with her for months. Yet nothing? I told you she's impossible." Chaik's pride burned. His reputation and his $500 bet hung on this night. So while Olivia came with trust, Chaik came with determination. The first attempt. On the couch, their laughter softened into silence. Chaik leaned close, kissed her softly, then deeply. Olivia melted into his arms, her heart racing. When he carried her to the bedroom, she trembled with both fear and anticipation. She told herself, "He will see I was waiting. He will know I trusted him." As he undressed her, she hesitated once, clutching her underwear. Chaik mistook it for shyness. "It's okay," he whispered. "You don't have to be afraid." But Olivia wasn't just shy. She was handing over a part of herself no one had ever touched. When he tried to enter, her body resisted. Pain tightened her face. Tears pricked her eyes. He paused. "Are you sure about this?" Her voice, broken, whispered, "Just do it." With one more push, he broke through. Olivia gasped, clutching the sheets as pain shot through her body. Tears spilled silently, but she bore it. Then Chaik froze. His eyes widened at the sight of blood. You were a virgin?" he whispered. Olivia nodded weakly, tears streaking her cheeks. "Yes, the guilt. For a moment, Chaik's pride dissolved, replaced by a heavy weight in his chest. The bet, the laughter of his friends, the $500 challenge. Suddenly it all seemed foolish, shameful. He had told himself she was just another conquest. But now he realized he had taken something precious, something she had guarded all her life, and reduced it to a drunken wager. Lying beside her, his arm brushing against her trembling shoulder, he felt a coldness in his bones. The satisfaction of winning had evaporated, leaving only the bitter aftertaste of regret. He turned his face toward the wall, restless, unable to meet her eyes. Guilt gnawed at him like a rat in the dark. He had won the bet, but in his heart, he knew he had lost something far greater, his own humanity. Olivia, however, didn't see his turmoil. She saw only the man she trusted, the man she thought would cherish her forever. She lay quietly, her face still damp with tears, her chest still rising and falling unevenly. Then, in a voice soft enough to pierce his conscience, she whispered, "I gave this to you because I believed in us." Her words cut him deeper than any insult ever could. He wanted to confess, to tell her the ugly truth right there, but his pride chained his tongue. So he remained silent, staring into the shadows, while the lie wrapped itself tighter around both of them. The awakening of desire. After that night, something shifted in Olivia. For years, she had lived with her body locked in discipline, denying herself intimacy out of fear, focus, and her mother's harsh warnings. But once she crossed that line with Chaik, her body adjusted quickly, almost too quickly. She discovered a side of herself she had never known. Every touch, every kiss from him stirred something uncontrollable inside her. He seemed to know exactly where to press, exactly how to move, exactly the rhythm that made her legs tremble and her voice catch in her throat. Afterwards, when she lay awake with her body still humming from the aftershocks, she would stare at the ceiling and whisper to herself, "So this is what I've been missing all these years." For Olivia, intimacy wasn't just physical pleasure. It was proof. Proof that she was loved, proof that she was wanted, proof that her trust hadn't been misplaced. The more she gave herself to Chaik, the more she believed they were building something lasting. Her vision of the future. Soon, Olivia began to weave him into her dreams. She thought of trips they would take together: Paris, Dubai, London. She imagined expanding her business with him at her side. Two powerful forces united. She saw children running through her spacious hallways, heard laughter at the dinner table, envisioned a man's arms around her at night instead of cold sheets. For once, she didn't feel like just a hustler, a supplier, a businesswoman battling through a man's world. She felt like a woman, vulnerable, cherished, hopeful. And she told herself again and again, maybe this is what I've been missing. Maybe this is my chance at love. His conflict. For Chaik, it was different. Each time she yielded to him, each time her eyes closed with trust and her lips whispered his name, guilt stabbed at him like a knife. He knew she was giving him her all, her heart, her trust, her body, her dreams. Yet he didn't love her. Worse still, he already had someone else. A woman he had been dating seriously for years. A woman his family already knew. The woman he intended to marry. To him, Olivia had never been meant for a future. She was only supposed to be a puzzle, a challenge, a trophy to brag about over drinks. But now, after he had won, after he had collected his $500, he no longer knew how to carry her expectation. Every time he looked into her hopeful eyes, he felt like a thief. Yet, his cowardice chained him to silence. Instead of confessing, he began to retreat. The growing distance. At first, the changes were small. He answered her calls a little later, replied to her messages with shorter words, postponed their meetings with excuses about work. Olivia noticed but excused it, telling herself he was busy. When they did meet, he still touched her with the same skill, still made her body sing, but his eyes were far away. She mistook it for stress. She cooked for him, bought him thoughtful gifts, even began hinting at the future she envisioned. But to Chaik, every gesture, every smile, every mention of tomorrow was a burden. He had gotten what he wanted. Now he only wanted out. Two hearts, two directions. Olivia thought she had finally found the man worth her years of waiting. Chaik was already planning his escape. Their hearts were on opposite roads, hers moving toward union, his toward separation. And while Olivia dreamed of forever, Chaik was quietly arranging his real forever with someone else. The $500 he won from the bet, he added to his savings. Money that would eventually help fund his wedding with his longtime girlfriend. The shock. The blow came suddenly, like lightning in a clear sky. One evening, Olivia scrolled through her phone casually, her eyes half distracted, when her chest tightened. Her timeline flooded with pictures. Chaik, dressed in a sharp agbada, standing proudly beside a beautiful woman in a glittering white gown, smiling, radiant, married. Her phone nearly slipped from her trembling hands. She refreshed the page again and again, praying it was a mistake, a joke, a staged photo shoot. But no, the hashtags, the comments, the flood of congratulations confirmed it. Her Chaik, her first, her only, was married, and she hadn't even known. The desperate search. Frantic, she called him. Once, twice, 10 times. Each time, her heart cracked a little more as the robotic voice repeated, "The number you have dialed is not reachable." The next day, she rushed to his apartment, her hands shaking as she banged on the door. Neighbors gave her blank stares. "He moved out weeks ago," one woman said casually. "After his wedding, he and his wife relocated. You didn't know?" Another added. Olivia's legs wobbled. She leaned against the wall, feeling as though the ground had disappeared beneath her. The tears that wouldn't stop. That night, she collapsed on her bed and wept until her pillow was soaked through. For weeks, she drifted like a shadow, refusing meals, staring into space for hours, replaying every word he had said, every promise he had implied. Her mother's bitter voice echoed louder than ever. "Men will scatter your life if you let them." Now she understood. The final blow. A month later, when the wounds had only begun to scab, she noticed the changes in her body. The missed cycle, the nausea, the unease. She bought a test kit, her hands trembling as she waited. 2 lines. Positive. Her scream never left her throat. She collapsed onto the bathroom floor, shaking, whispering, "Pregnant. For him. For a man who left me for another." The abortion decision. Her nights became battlegrounds. She paced her mansion halls in silk nightgowns, clutching her belly with trembling hands. A part of her longed to keep the child. A companion, a family, a proof that she had once been loved. But fear crushed her. What if people find out? What if his wife finds out? What if the child grows up knowing their father never wanted them? Her mother's voice screamed again. "Men will scatter your life if you let them." And so Olivia decided. She would end it. She would erase the shame before it grew into a living reminder. At the clinic, she arrived in disguise, sunglasses, scarf, a plain dress. In the waiting room, her foot tapped nervously against the tiles, her mind begging for escape. When the nurse finally called her in, her chest tightened as though a hand had closed around it. She lay on the cold hospital bed, tears streaming silently as whispers of prayer clung to her lips. When it was over, she left weaker than ever, a hollow woman walking through corridors, carrying a secret she would never share. The letter. Days later, a brown envelope arrived at her mansion. She tore it open casually and froze. It was from Chaik. Inside, he confessed everything. The bet, the lies, the pride, the foolish $500 challenge. He wrote that if he had known she was a virgin, he would never have touched her. That he regretted it. That he was sorry. Sorry. Olivia's body shook with rage and sorrow. She tore the letter into pieces and fell to the ground, her sobs breaking her apart. Building her empire. From then on, Olivia sealed her heart shut. Love had destroyed her. Now she would destroy the weakness it brought. She buried her pain in business. She woke earlier, worked harder, doubled, then tripled her hustle. She expanded from fabrics into imports, then real estate, then oil servicing. She built companies upon companies, signing deals with the sharpness of a hawk. By her early 30s, Olivia Nwosu was a name carved in power. Politicians sought her, newspapers celebrated her, and her wealth towered like a fortress. Fame without joy, but her mansion in Banana Island echoed with emptiness. No children's laughter, no husband's voice, just chandeliers glowing coldly above her solitary dinners. She often sat by her glass windows, staring at the lagoon, a glass of red wine in hand. "I have everything," she whispered, "yet I have nothing." The loneliness within. People envied her. Men desired her. Women admired her. But no one knew the truth. No one knew that beneath the silks, the cars, and the diamonds was a woman scarred by betrayal, haunted by abortion, and broken by a letter that proved she was once a bet. And so, Olivia built an empire of gold on top of a heart of ashes. The irony of wealth. Olivia had everything money could buy, but deep inside, she longed for something money could never give her. Love that was unbought, untouched by her wealth. She wanted to be pursued, to have a man walk up boldly, smile at her, and want her for who she was, not for the size of her bank account. She longed for a man who would look her in the eyes and see a woman, not a walking empire. But the richer she became, the lonelier her world grew. Ordinary men admired her from afar but dared not approach. "She won't even look at me. She's a billionaire. She belongs in another world," they told themselves. Others assumed she was proud, arrogant, or already kept by some faceless politician. The cruel irony was this: the higher she rose, the further away real love seemed to drift. She wanted men to come close, but they stayed away. She was not untouchable, but that was exactly how they saw her. A hunger beyond wealth. In her mid-30s, her longing sharpened into an ache she could no longer ignore. She would sit in her glass-walled office after closing multimillion naira contracts and think, "What is the use of all this money if I have no one to share it with? No one to sit across from me at my dining table, no one waiting for me in bed when I return at night." Sometimes the hunger became unbearable. She wanted to touch and be touched. She wanted to feel the fire of intimacy again. Not a betrayal, not a transaction, not a game, but love that was genuine. She wanted a child, her own child, not for status, not for legacy, but to fill her marble halls with laughter, to erase the silence that echoed too loudly at night. She wanted a family that couldn't vanish like her father, one that couldn't betray her like Chike. But men didn't come, and she didn't go looking. The silent battle. Her life became a war between her body and her mind. By day, she was the Iron Lady. Flawless, commanding, the mogul everyone admired. But by night, she was just a lonely woman clutching her pillow, whispering into the darkness. "If only someone would look past my wealth and see me." Desire tugged at her like a shadow, but fear always dragged her back. Her past whispered, "Men cannot be trusted." Her wealth built a wall no man dared to climb, and so she remained trapped, yearning yet untouched, a prisoner inside her own empire. The ragged stranger. It began innocently. One humid afternoon, as Olivia's convoy slowed at her gate, she noticed him, a ragged man, clothes torn, hair wild, eyes empty in that haunting way only the broken carry. He wasn't begging. He wasn't even staring at her with greed, like others often did. Instead, he looked at her car with a hollow emptiness that pricked her heart. On impulse, she rolled down her tinted glass slightly and handed him a few naira notes and a takeaway pack of food. He mumbled clumsy thanks, his voice cracked, and shuffled away. Her guards frowned. "Madam, ignore him. He's a nuisance." She waved them off. "He's harmless, just hungry." That was the beginning. His routine. After that day, he became part of her world. Morning or evening, he was always there, standing quietly near her gate. And every time, Olivia would hand him something: food, water, money. Her staff whispered, "Why does Madam care for that mad man so much? She treats him as if he is family." But Olivia didn't mind. In a strange way, his presence gave her comfort. At least someone was always there, waiting for her return. A curious attachment. As months passed, the man grew bolder. He stood closer, peering into her car windows as though trying to memorize her face. Sometimes he trailed her convoy a short distance before stopping. Her guards grew uneasy. "Madam, this man is getting too comfortable. We should chase him away." But Olivia shook her head. "Leave him. He has no one. Let him be." Deep down, she thought, "At least someone notices me, even if it's a man the world calls mad." The walk. One late afternoon, Olivia stepped outside her gates for a walk. The sunset painted the streets gold, the air thick with the scent of dust and flowers. And there he was, slouched against the sidewalk, his clothes hanging loosely, his body bare in ways she tried not to notice. Her gaze lingered too long. She looked away quickly, but the image stayed with her. Her heart thudded. She scolded herself. Why did I even notice that? What is wrong with me? But the seed had been planted. The shame of desire. That night, she tossed in her silk sheets, restless. The image replayed in her mind, uninvited. She pressed her palms to her face. I am Olivia Nwosu. I own empires. How can I even think this way about a man who has nothing? Not even his mind. But loneliness is a cruel hunger, and hers was eating her alive. The secret act. One night, desperation overpowered reason. She slipped out under cover of darkness, signaling quietly to him. He followed without question, his steps unsteady but obedient. Inside, she bathed him with her own hands. She scrubbed away the dirt, gave him fresh clothes, fed him warm food. For the first time, she saw not a madman, but simply a man. As she wiped his face, her robe slipped slightly. His eyes caught hers. Then, clumsy but insistent, he kissed her. Olivia froze, but she didn't push him away. Years of loneliness roared louder than logic. Her body betrayed her, giving in to the warmth she had denied herself for too long. The crossing. What began as a kiss tumbled into something deeper. She didn't plan it. She didn't resist. In that hidden room, her empire crumbled, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel alive. Living a double life. From then on, Olivia kept him hidden in a back room of her mansion. She carried food herself, forbade her staff from asking questions, and locked the door whenever she left. By day, she was the flawless mogul. By night, she surrendered to the fire she had buried too long. Her staff whispered, "Why is Madame always taking food herself? Why does she vanish for hours?" But no one dared confront her. Filling the void. In that hidden room, she unleashed every hunger she had suppressed. Every touch became her rebellion against loneliness. Every embrace was a reminder she was still a woman, not just a machine for wealth. And though the man's mind was unstable, his body was strong, his passion unfiltered. With him, there were no games, no betrayals, no expectations, just raw, unpolished need. For Olivia, it was freedom. For the world, it would have been scandal. The second test. Weeks passed. One morning, Olivia woke with a heaviness in her body she recognized too well. Her appetite shifted. Her cycle didn't come. Her hands shook as she bought the test herself. In her bathroom, she waited, staring at the strip. Two bold lines appeared. This time, she didn't collapse in despair. She didn't think of shame or betrayal. She clutched the test to her chest and wept. Not out of sorrow, but relief. Yes, this is what I wanted. My child. My family. For the first time in years, Olivia smiled through her tears. This pregnancy wasn't a curse. It was fate giving her another chance. The next step. But reality hit Olivia like a cold blade. The child growing inside her was not from some carefully chosen suitor or a wealthy man her peers would admire. No, it was from the very man the world spat on, mocked, and dismissed as insane. How will I explain this? She whispered to herself that night, staring at her reflection in the tall mirror. Her hand rested protectively over her belly, but her mind swirled. Can I raise a family with him? Will society ever let me? Will they forgive me for choosing a man who once lived like a ghost at my gate? Her empire had taught her to make bold decisions, to never let fear stop her. And so, the next morning, Olivia acted. She dressed in the simplest clothes she owned. Plain trousers, a soft blouse, no jewelry except a scarf tied tightly around her head. She told her guards to stay behind, insisting she had personal errands. Then, for the first time, she drove him herself, away from the gate, away from curious eyes, to a private hospital hidden in the heart of the city. The truth revealed. The hospital visit felt endless. The man was examined from head to toe. Blood tests, brain scans, physical evaluations. Long sessions where specialists asked him questions he only half answered, sometimes drifting off mid-sentence, other times speaking with startling clarity. Olivia sat outside the consultation room, her palms damp, her legs restless. The hum of the hospital machines echoed in her ears like drums of judgment. Every tick of the clock dragged her deeper into fear. Finally, the consultant called her in. He spoke in the calm tone doctors use when truth must be delivered gently. "Madam," he began, adjusting his glasses. "This man is not beyond help. His case is not what people assume." Olivia's heart pounded. "Not madness."
No.
"What you've been seeing is the aftermath of a psychological collapse. Years ago, he suffered a devastating betrayal. The woman he trusted most robbed him of everything he worked for and abandoned him. That loss broke him mind, spirit, and will. But listen carefully." The doctor leaned forward. "This is not permanent. With therapy, proper medication, and patience, he can recover. He can live again." Olivia's throat tightened. She turned to look through the glass at him, sitting quietly on the examination bed, head bowed, wearing the clean shirt she had forced on him earlier. He looked less like the ragged man at her gate and more like someone halfway back to himself. In that instant, her vision shifted. She no longer saw a madman. She saw a wounded man, a man just like her, broken by betrayal. A flicker of hope. On the drive home, Olivia kept glancing at him in the passenger seat. He sat calmer now, his posture straighter, his eyes no longer darting with confusion. The hospital had given him more than treatment. They had given him dignity. Her thoughts raced. Maybe this isn't madness. Maybe this is destiny. He was broken by love, just as I was. Perhaps that's why he stayed at my gate. Perhaps that's why I couldn't walk away. Her hand brushed her stomach unconsciously, where the faint swell had begun to show. A smile tugged at her lips. For the first time in decades, she allowed herself to imagine a future not as the untouchable billionaire, not as the lonely woman in a mansion too big for her soul, but as a mother. And maybe, just maybe, as a partner to a man the world had thrown away. The secret mission. From that day forward, Olivia made it her mission to see him healed. But she also knew the cruel weight of scandal. If anyone discovered that the Olivia Nwosu, billionaire, mogul, empire builder, was nurturing a man once dismissed as a madman, society would crush her reputation. So she worked in silence. She told her staff she had private projects to attend to. She disguised herself in plain clothes, scarves, and oversized glasses whenever she took him to therapy. In public, she remained flawless. At board meetings, she still dazzled in couture gowns, her face on magazine covers, her speeches making headlines. But behind the gates of her mansion, she built a second world. A hidden world where she was not just an empire builder, but a caretaker, a lover, and an expectant mother. The first steps. Therapy began weekly. At first, he resisted, restless and withdrawn. His answers were scattered, sometimes nonsensical, sometimes painfully sharp. He would sit in silence for long stretches, as though afraid of his own voice. But Olivia stayed. She sat in the room during every session, holding his hand when his words faltered, steadying him when his memories grew heavy. She didn't rush him. She didn't judge. Medication followed, careful doses that calmed his mind, giving him space to heal. Patience is key, the doctors reminded her. Olivia only nodded. Patience was a language she knew well. If she could build her empire brick by brick, she could rebuild a man's soul moment by moment. A bond growing stronger. At home, the changes were slow but visible. He began eating more neatly, no longer rushing his meals like a starving man. He started responding when she spoke, his words clearer, his sentences forming. Some days, he even asked her questions about the food, the television shows she left on for him, sometimes even about her day. For Olivia, each small change was a miracle only she was privileged to witness. With every word he spoke, every smile he gave, she felt her heart tethering to him more firmly. Desire was still there, raw, burning, but it was joined now by something deeper. Respect. He was no longer the man at her gate. He was someone rising from ashes, and she was honored to watch him rebuild. Preparing for new life. Meanwhile, her body told its own story. Her pregnancy advanced, steady and undeniable. Alone in quiet moments, she would rest her hands over her stomach and whisper, "You are not a mistake. You are my blessing, my family." She began making secret preparations. In the farthest wing of her mansion, a section none of her staff had reason to enter, she built a hidden nursery. She bought tiny clothes, soft blankets, toys that still carried the scent of newness. She walked through baby shops in disguise, her heart fluttering each time she held a little onesie to her chest. Her cook noticed her strange cravings, the odd combinations she requested. The housekeepers saw the glow that came over her face, the way she moved slower, heavier. They whispered among themselves, "Madam is glowing these days." Yes, but something is different, very different. The dual life. By day, Olivia was still the mogul, commanding boardrooms, signing million-dollar contracts, walking red carpets. The world saw her as untouchable, flawless, untarnished. By night, she was transformed. She became a caretaker, bringing him his medications, sitting beside him as therapy unearthed his wounds, holding him when the tears came. She became a lover, listening to his halting stories of betrayal, reminding him he was not alone. She became a mother, whispering promises to the child who grew inside her. Her empire gave her power, but this secret gave her purpose. For the first time in decades, Olivia wasn't just living. She was building a family. The gossip erupts, but secrets never stay silent forever. Slowly, her staff began to notice. They saw how she carried trays herself, how she vanished for hours into the guest wing, how muffled voices drifted from a room no one was allowed to enter. The whispers grew sharper. "I saw her with that ragged man, the same one from the gate."
Impossible.
"Madam would never. But I swear it's true. She treats him like he belongs here." One evening, returning from the guest room, Olivia overheard two of her guards muttering by the corridor. "How can Madame bring that madman inside? With all her billions? Is that the man she entertains?" Their snickers were low, but their words pierced like knives. Olivia froze. Her chest burned, her fists clenched. It wasn't just anger, it was fury, it was protectiveness. They hadn't seen what she saw. They hadn't witnessed his effort, his slow climb back to humanity. How dare they mock him? How dare they mock her choice? That night, staring at her ceiling, she whispered into the darkness, "I will not let anyone shame him. Not in my house. Not while I breathe." The purge. The next morning, Olivia summoned every staff member to the main hall. They stood in stiff rows, whispering nervously. She stood before them, regal in her silence, her eyes like cold fire. "I hear the whispers," she began, her voice sharp and commanding. "I see the stares. Some of you think you have the right to judge me, or to judge the kindness I choose to show." A hush fell. "Let me make this very clear. This is my house, my life, my rules. If you cannot respect me, if you cannot respect the people under this roof, then you have no place here." Before anyone could protest, she called out names, the guards who mocked, the cook who gossiped, the housekeepers who pried. "You are dismissed. Pack your things before nightfall." The hall went still. Then one by one, the guilty shuffled out, faces pale with fear. By evening, the mansion was quieter, emptier. But Olivia felt lighter. She had not just sacked workers. She had cut out betrayal. She had uprooted mockery. She had purged judgment. A mother's fierce heart. That night, Olivia carried food down the silent hallway herself. Her hand brushed her stomach, and she whispered to her unborn child, "No one will ever shame your father. Not here. Not anywhere." And in that moment, she understood. Her protectiveness was no longer only for the man healing in her guest room. It was for her family, the family she had longed for all her life. Rebuilding the household. The mansion was too big to run alone. For weeks, Olivia cooked her own meals, carried her own trays, cleaned her own spaces. But she knew she couldn't live this way forever. She needed help, carefully chosen help. This time, she was meticulous. She refused the usual agencies where gossip ran like wildfire. Instead, she tapped into her private network, a trusted friend's recommendation, a loyal business partner's niece, a relative of her late mentor. She interviewed each candidate personally, one-on-one. She didn't just test their skills. She studied their eyes, their silences, their ability to listen without probing. She searched for one quality above all: loyalty. Rules of loyalty. When she hired them, she laid down her law. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. "You are here to work, not to pry into my life, not to carry stories outside these walls. My privacy is non-negotiable. If you cannot respect that, do not take this job." The new staff, a cook, 2 housekeepers, 3 guards, nodded eagerly. They didn't know about the man in the guest room. They didn't know the truth about the child she carried. To them, he was just someone Madame was caring for, and Olivia intended to keep it that way. Quiet protection. The mansion settled again. Meals were prepared on time, the compound spotless, her schedule back in order. But none of the staff were allowed near the guest room. Only Olivia entered. Only Olivia carried food. Only Olivia managed his therapy schedules and medications. The staff whispered sometimes, "Madame spends too much time in that wing," but none dared question her. They had already learned that her silence was deadlier than her anger. The growing evidence. By the 6th month, Olivia's pregnancy could no longer be hidden. Her once loose gowns now curved around her belly. Her glow was brighter, her steps slower, her body heavy with life. The staff noticed, of course. The cook quietly began preparing nourishing soups and teas for expectant mothers. The housekeepers adjusted her routines so she would have more time to rest. The guards grew fiercer, watching the gates with doubled vigilance. But no one asked questions. No one dared. They only worked, silent, loyal, just as she demanded. The public pressure. The city of Lagos never slept, and neither did its rumors. Olivia Nwosu, the iron-willed billionaire who had built an empire from nothing, had managed for decades to keep her private life locked away behind high gates and iron discipline. But now the whispers were louder than the horns on Third Mainland Bridge. She was pregnant. The newspapers speculated with reckless abandon. The gossip blogs lived for it. Markets buzzed with it. "Have you heard? Madame Olivia is carrying a child." "Whose child?" one trader asked, her eyes widening. "Must be a politician. Who else could have such access?" No, another countered. "I heard it's a foreign investor, one of those men from Dubai or America." "With her kind of money?" a young man laughed. "Anything is possible. Maybe she went to the clinic abroad and did it herself." But Olivia never confirmed or denied. She wore her pregnancy like she wore her wealth, boldly, unapologetically, and without explanation. At charity events, she smiled graciously. At board meetings, she carried her files and her belly with the same confidence. When cameras clicked, she posed with the poise of a woman who feared nothing. Yet, behind her silence lay a secret too wild for society to imagine. Inside her sprawling mansion, hidden from the greedy eyes of the world, lived the man the city once mocked, the ragged soul she had pulled from the streets. He was not yet whole, but he was healing. and in her womb grew the child she had long prayed for, proof that life could be rewritten. For the first time in her life, Olivia Nwosu did not care about the world's chatter. She had her child on the way. She had her family, unconventional as it was. That was enough. The humid night. It was one of those Lagos nights when the air felt thick, as though even the moon was sweating. Olivia lay in her room, restless, when a sharp tug gripped her belly. She stiffened, brushing it off as fatigue. Pregnancy had demanded much from her body already. But then came the second tug, sharper, longer, unforgiving. She gasped, clutching the edge of her silk sheets. "It's time," she whispered to herself, breath shallow, eyes wide. She had prepared for this moment in silence. Months earlier, she had secured a private doctor, sworn to secrecy under the weight of her fortune and trust. But planning did not soften the storm. Her waters broke. Pain shot through her like lightning. Her cries rang through the mansion, startling everyone. The household erupted. The young cook in the kitchen dropped her ladle, covered her mouth, and fell to her knees, muttering prayers in Igbo. The guards at the gate stiffened, gripping their rifles as if danger had breached the compound. The housemaids scrambled in confusion, torn between running to her aid and obeying their unspoken rule of never disturbing Madame's privacy. And in the guest room, the man once broken stirred. His awakening. He had lived in fog for years, therapy peeling it away layer by fragile layer. But that night, Olivia's cries cut sharper than any medicine. He froze, his body trembling as he pressed his palms against the wall. The sound pierced him. Something deep within whispered, "She is in pain. Because of me." Guided not by thought but by instinct, he opened the door he rarely touched. His bare feet padded against marble floors until he reached her room. There she was, sweat-drenched, sheets twisted beneath her, gripping them with white-knuckled fists. Her hair clung to her forehead, her face contorted in agony. And then their eyes met. In that single look, the fog that had cloaked him for years began to lift. He wasn't a shadow. He wasn't a ghost of a man. He was real. He was here. He was about to become a father. The birth. The doctor arrived quickly, his nurse by his side, both moving with the quiet efficiency that came with heavy bribes and heavier oaths of secrecy. The mansion became an echo chamber of Olivia's screams. Each contraction wrung her body, each push drained her strength. The staff hovered at a distance, listening, their own hearts pacing with hers. "Push, madam. One more time," the doctor urged. And then, slicing through the night, came a new sound. A cry, high and fierce, the voice of life itself. A baby boy. The nurse placed him in Olivia's trembling arms. She gasped as tears spilled freely. "My child, my own child," she whispered, pressing her lips against his damp forehead. The man stood nearby, hands quivering, chest heaving as if he had run a race. His eyes widened with disbelief. He had thought his life was over, but here it was, beginning anew, wrapped in tiny limbs and tender cries. The mansion transformed. The house that had been a fortress of silence now throbbed with life. The guards at the gates held their heads higher, as though guarding royalty. The cook hummed while stirring pots of pepper soup and herbs for her recovering madam. The housemaids carried laundry with laughter spilling from their lips. And in the nursery, Olivia rocked her son gently, whispering songs her mother once sang to her. The mansion would never be the same. A second chance at life. For Olivia, the baby's cry was redemption. Each giggle erased a decade of loneliness. Every finger curled around hers stitched a wound in her heart. For him, the baby was proof that his story was not over. He was no longer just the broken man mocked at her gate. He was a father, a partner, a man restored. One evening, as Olivia sat cradling the boy, he whispered through tears, "You saved me. You gave me life again. I owe you everything." She shook her head gently. "No. You owe me nothing. We were both broken. We healed together." A man of his own. Olivia knew the world was cruel. If he remained under her shadow, society would brand him useless. a man living off his wife's billions. She would not let them mock him again. So she built him a chance. She invested in him discreetly, trucks, drivers, and contracts for a logistics business. Not charity but trust. He took it with gratitude and poured his sweat into it. Soon he was earning his own keep. He came home tired but fulfilled, his son rushing into his arms, his wife smiling with pride. He was no longer a shadow. He was a man of his own. A love renewed. Olivia's love for him was unlike anything she had known. It wasn't the deceit of Chike. It wasn't the bitterness of her parents. This was love tested by fire, reborn in ashes. And he cherished her not as a billionaire, but as the woman who gave him back his dignity, his family, his life. The child who united them. Their son became the soul of the home. His laughter spilled into every corner. His steps echoed down hallways once silent. When he turned one, Olivia held a quiet celebration. No paparazzi, no headlines, just trusted friends, loyal staff, and family. That night, after the guests left, he turned to her, tears shimmering in his eyes. "We've come so far," he said softly. "You gave me life. You gave me a family. I want us to marry. Not for the world, for us." Olivia's heart swelled. For the first time, she didn't feel lonely. She felt whole. "Yes," she whispered. "For us. For him." A new beginning. The wedding was nothing like Lagos had ever seen from her. No gold-draped halls. No foreign bands. No sea of politicians. Instead, a garden in her estate bloomed with fresh flowers and white silk. Only a few friends, partners, and staff were invited. No headlines. No cameras. Only love. The bride. On her wedding day, Olivia stood in front of the mirror, dressed in an ivory gown, soft, flowing, nothing like the loud dresses she'd once mocked. A crown of flowers rested on her head. Her son toddled in, dressed in a tiny suit. She scooped him up, kissed his cheek, and whispered, "Today, we become a family." The groom. At the altar, he stood tall, suit sharp, transformation complete. He was no longer the ragged man at her gate, but the partner she had chosen. His eyes welled up as she walked towards him, hand in hand with their child. The vows. Her voice trembled. "I built an empire, but today I build a home. With you. With our son. With love that cannot be broken." His voice cracked as he held her hands. "I was a man the world cast aside. But you saw me. You gave me reason to live again. Today, I give you my life, my loyalty, my love." Their son clutched both their fingers, giggling, as if sealing the vow himself. The kiss. When they kissed, the gathering erupted in applause. It wasn't spectacle. It wasn't wealth. It was love, raw, real, unshakable. The woman who had everything. That night, under garden lights, Olivia rested her head on his shoulder. "For years, I thought I had everything," she whispered. "But I was empty. Now I have you. I have him. Now, I truly have everything." And for the first time, the woman who had built an empire realized she had built something greater, a home. Thanks for watching. Kindly like, share with friends, and subscribe for more amazing stories.